So I'm showing it's 2 o'clock. I'm going to throw this
Yeah.
back over to Nathaniel. And
All
Nathaniel,
right. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Hi. Yeah, and welcome everybody to this installment of our AGU Webinars Professional Development Series, featuring David Harwell, Director of Talent Pool for the American Geophysical Union. I'm Nathaniel Janik, as Dave mentioned. I'm the Career Services Coordinator here at AGU, and I'll be your host for today's webinar, Resumes 101, Building a Resume That Will Catch Their Eye. Dave already talked a little bit about this, but before we begin, just if you have any questions throughout this presentation, feel free to type them into the question box on the right side control panel. At the end of the presentation, we're going to get through as many of your questions as we can until that 3 o'clock mark hits. And also, if you want to get the slides for today's presentation, you can find that in your panel as well under handouts. And finally, the link to the online recording of this webinar will be sent to all webinar attendees in a few days. Once again, presenting today's webinar is David Harwell. Dave's already introduced himself a little bit, but I'll let him do his own introduction, and I'll pass it along to him now. Take it away, Dave.
You know, I don't think you need to know that much more about me. I work here at the American Geophysical Union, and I'm the Director of Talent Pool Programs, and this is one of the programs that we bring to you as part of that. So today we're going to be talking about resumes, and I want to put you in the driver's seat. So for most of you, you're applying for jobs, you want to know what to put in your resume. I think it's helpful to see what the resume looks like from the other side, because you know, we tend to think that the resume is all about us, but really it should be all about the employer, the potential employer, and what they want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you the employer for just a moment, and I'm going to show you 3 different resumes. Now, they're all from the same person. We use the same set of skills, experiences to build the resumes, but they're different formats. And I want you to look at them. I'm going to give you 30 seconds for each one of these resumes, and I want you to look at it, and then I'm going to go on to the next one. At the end of it, there's 3 of them. We'll ask you, I'm going to turn it back over to Nathaniel, and Nathaniel's going to ask you which one of these 3 you're going to invite back for an interview. Okay? So we will start with sample A. You have 30 seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Here's the next one, 30 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Here's the third sample, 30 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so Nathaniel?
Yeah, all right. So yeah, we're launching the first poll here. Put on your hiring manager hat and answer this question. Which of these resume examples is the best between those 3? The choices again are A, B, and C. And I'm going to give a few more moments for everybody that wants to reply and close the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, and it looks like most of you answered resume B with 88%, but there are a few of you that liked A and C.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Great. Well, let's talk about it for a minute. And we're going to use the question box again. I want you to tell me what it is that you liked. But let me tell you first why I only gave you 30 seconds. That's because that's usually about all you get. Turns out that people make decisions, hiring managers make decisions in about 7 seconds. I also only showed you the first half of the first page. That's because that's the most important real estate you have in a resume or a CV. The same principles would apply to a CV. So if you're not getting their attention within that first 7 seconds, within that first half page, they're going to throw away your resume, because really this process is about eliminating more than finding. It's more about exclusion than inclusion. They probably have 200, maybe 300 resumes that are coming in for a particular job, and they're going to have to winnow that down to just the top 5, and that's who's going to get to come back for the interview. So for you, that was B. But before we get to B, a few of you liked A. What was it that you liked about A? If there's anything that you liked about sample A, type it into the question box now. Clean format. Thanks, Timothy. Nancy likes the format. Okay, what is it about the format that you like? Veronica, I liked resume A because of the skills section. Okay, that's good. Anything else that you liked about A? Go ahead and type that into the question box. Okay, what did you not like about A? Go ahead, just let it loose. Type it into the question box. Typos. Unprofessional email. Yeah, let's talk about that email for just a second. Right here. awesomebabe@gmail.com. So not the most professional. That's not great. So we wouldn't want to do that all the time. Skills are hard to read. Typos not formatted well. Nothing turned off by email, and typos. Yeah, so a lot of times reviewers are looking for anything, any reason to eliminate you, and so it's important for us not to give them that reason. All right, let's go on to B. Now this is the one that almost everybody liked. 88% of you liked this one. So what was it that you liked about it? Go ahead and type that into the question box. Very succinct, yes. Like the highlight sections, well structured, easy to read, relevant coursework. Highlight section again. Oh, a lot of people like those highlights. You can read the highlights in 7 seconds. That's right, that's why we do that. Put it right up, the best stuff right up at the top. It's like the headline of a newspaper. So easy to read, more detailed than A, especially for educations. Thanks, Kendra. What did you not like? Was there anything about this particular format or example that you didn't like? Go ahead and tell me about that. Type it into the question box. Oh, there's always something. Here we go. Does not highlight skills. Well, maybe they chose the wrong skills. Small name. Work is lowest on page. All right, we can talk about that. Spaces between his, well, this is Jane, so it's probably her. Email and the number are very narrow. Okay. Boring format. Yeah, it is kind of boring. All right, thanks, Jen. So let's go on to C. Here's C. Okay, sample C. What did you like about C? Was there anything that you liked about sample C? Type it into the question box. Nope. Thanks, Ty. You're being honest, keeping it real. There's Jose. Yeah, ugly. Name is nice and large. Okay, thanks for being positive. GPA is there. Relevant coursework. What did you not like about this one? Way too many fonts. Yeah, so you have to be consistent in your formatting. Turns out that human beings are meaning-making machines. That is, we look at things and look for patterns. And as soon as we establish the pattern and learn how to read a document, we want it to stay that way. So if you change your fonts or you change the way you're highlighting different parts of your resume, you will at first frustrate people, and if you do too much of it, you'll even piss them off. And from the employer's point of view, you don't want that to happen. Pamela, too many colors. You're right. Incoherent format, inconsistent font size. Thanks, Jane. So, also too much highlighting. Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, so here we really don't know what's important, because some things are in bold, some things are in italics, some things are blue. So what is it that we're supposed to look at? Can't all be important. Is the stuff at the top the most important, or is it the stuff that's the biggest? So, so thanks everybody for the feedback. So we'll come back to you again. We have a couple of polls that are happening a little later on, so I'm going to ask you more things. So pay attention, and we'll get back to you in just a minute. But let's talk a little bit about what a resume is and about what it is not. So a resume is really a marketing tool. It's a tool that you're going to use. It's like an advertisement that shows the best things about you. And you should have a different version of your resume for every job that you're applying to. It's electronic, it's on your computer. Why not print out a different copy and have it match the job that you're applying to? And there were a couple of comments about the highlights section maybe not being the right highlights. Well, really the things that you pull out and put in the highlights section should be the ones that match the job that you're applying to. Now, if you're doing a general one, like on an online job board, that's a little bit different. We can talk about that. But still, you want to bring the best things about you up into that, because this is the first thing that most employers are going to see from you, this in your cover letter. It's a way to show how you match with your potential job, and it should be concise and communicate and differentiate you from others. Now, one of the things that I hear from employers is that there are so many templates out on the web, or you can get services to write up your resume and they all make them look the same, so there's nothing differentiating you. So the things that you highlight in your resume really need to be those things that differentiate you from others. Now, the resume is not a CV. CV means curriculum vitae, is the history of your life, or all the things that you've done, right? And we don't want this to be that. Now, when I use the term resume, that's really a U.S. term. Outside the U.S., you may call this type of document a CV, but what I'm really talking about here is the document that you're going to use to apply for an industrial or maybe a government job. Academia uses a much longer format that lists literally everything that you've ever done related to your teaching experience. And we'll talk about that in another webinar, but that is not what this is supposed to be. Okay, it's also not a complete listing of your skills. And the reason why we fill out a resume is to get an employer's attention, because we want them to invite us for an interview. So we're not going to get a job from this, so don't set your expectations there. They need to know a lot more about you before they'll hire you. But what we're really trying to do is make sure that they know the relevant things about you that would get them to pick up the phone or type on their keyboard to send you an email to invite you in for an interview or call you up for a telephone interview. Okay. Here's some principles just to keep in mind. So specific is better than general. Tell them exactly what it is that you did. If it's too general, it's not going to differentiate you from somebody else. Be concise. They're only going to read the first few sentences before they're making up their mind. So you got to make sure that you're capturing the information and you're presenting it in a way that they can absorb very quickly. Accurate is better than creative, so don't make up stuff. Talk about what's real, talk about what you've actually done, but choose the things that demonstrate that you have the expertise that they're looking for. And careful is definitely better than careless, because one typo could be the difference between you getting a call back or your resume ending up in the trash bin, right, or the recycle bin. Now, the structure of a resume is that you're going to have the introduction section, which includes the heading and a job objective. Then there are the highlights, a background, and supporting information. So let's talk about the top. We'll talk about the introduction. You got to make sure that they can call you back. If they like you, then you want them to immediately know how to contact you. The most critical pieces of information for that are your name, your email. It should be a reliable email. It should be a professional email. A phone number. Again, this should be a reliable phone number. So perhaps your cell phone number, or if you don't have a phone number that is reliable, or you have to share a phone like in a lab, maybe you get a Google Voice number or some online number. These days those are free and they're very reliable and they come with voicemail. So make sure it's something with voicemail so that you'll get the actual message if they call you back. Now, in the old days would say that you need a physical address, and that's optional. You can choose on that. There are actually some arguments against putting that on there because it shows what area of the country you're in, and if you're not local, they may decide, well, I don't want to go after that candidate because I would have to pay to move them to wherever my job is. You can also put on a link to your web page or a LinkedIn profile. Again, that's optional. So the last two are optional, but make sure you have your name, your email, and your phone number. And you know what? Go ahead and put that information in the header so it shows up on every page. That way, if they print out your resume and they drop it on the floor and it gets shuffled in with a bunch of other folks, they'll still have your contact information on the page that matches the thing that they want to talk to you about. Okay. So let's talk about a job objective. Now, job objectives are also optional, but these days I think they're pretty important. And that's because, well, let's go back to the question that we had earlier about posting online and how to optimize for that. Okay, I think the job objective does a few things for you. Whether you use it or not, it's going to help you focus on which skill sets you want to highlight. Okay, which things do you want to talk about? What's best and most unique about you? So by going through the exercise of creating a job objective, you'll actually force yourself to do that. The other thing is these days online, say, let's look at it, LinkedIn, for example. There's going to be a section at the top which is a summary. They just call it summary, but it's a professional summary, and you've got to use a narrative format in that. You could use bullets like in the highlight sections we were seeing before, but it doesn't work as well on search engine optimization. So if somebody's searching for you on Google, Google's going to index all those LinkedIn profiles and all the profiles in our jobs database and other jobs databases. But highlights are usually listed with an action verb or an adverb first, and then a phrase supporting it next. And what people search for are nouns with a couple of adjectives. So that's so in order to incorporate the proper nouns and phrases into your description of yourself and your skill sets, it's good to do it in narrative form, and a job objective is in narrative form. Now here's your formula. It has 3 parts. You should tell the type of position that you want. Number 2, what's your unique contribution that you can make in that role? And then number 3, what's your preferred type of employer? Now by doing that, you can carry the theme throughout your whole resume, and that way it will look focused. The number one complaint that I get from employers is, well, they say clearly the candidate didn't know what they wanted to do. Clearly they were unable to tell me what it was that they could uniquely do to solve my problem. And they clearly didn't read the job description so that they would know what it is that I want them to do. By going through the job objective, creating a job objective for yourself, you'll be able to do that. And I think it's a good practice. I actually advise people to go and look at job listings. So go through job boards. You can go through ours, you can go to Indeed.com. There are several other job boards, federal government job boards. Find 3 jobs that you like. And then what is it about those jobs that you like? So this is an example of a job listing for a computational geophysicist, right? So this happens to be at the PhD level. And in that job description, one of the things that they said was critical for the job is that they need a computational geoscience position that's providing insights into sediment transport through multi-scale numerical modeling at an energy company. Okay, so sorry, that's the job description that I wrote. The project hydrologist bachelor's level is just below that. So a hydrology position specializing in water quality, water rights, and usage for water resource planning company. So sorry, I'm going to get to the others when I get to the highlights. I skipped ahead in my head. So these are 2 examples, one at the PhD level, one at the bachelor's level, of a job objective that was written for a particular job that they wanted to do. So at the PhD level, they wanted a computational geophysics job. This is a person that happened to develop these type of models, and they want to work for a private company, an energy company. They are a computational geoscientist type position, and the contribution that they're able to make is that they have experience in sediment transport through multi-scale numerical modeling. Okay, they can build those types of models. Now at the bachelor's level, here's an example, and it's a difference in sophistication here. So, so that's something else that I often see. If you're at the PhD level, I'm going to expect more from you. If you're at the bachelor's level, you haven't had as much education, you don't have as much experience. So this particular person was looking for a hydrology position, and their area that they had studied, their specialization is water quality, water rights, and usage for a resource planning company. So they were looking for a different kind of company. All right. Bad examples. Here's a few. To join a group to reach new horizons in productivity and growth. So tell me what you think about that. What's good, what's bad about that? You can type it into the question box. It's very ambitious. Here we go. Timothy, I knew I could count on you. It's all fluff. It's not real. It's nothing tangible there, vague. So we really don't know what they want except for they want a job. Now, you turned in your resume. I know you want a job. What about this second one, a management versus research position? Now it's bad. I'll tell you it's bad. But why is it bad? Go ahead and type your response into the question box. No clarity? Okay, yeah, they don't really tell what kind of position they want. What does it mean? That's from Elizabeth. This one actually gets rid of or eliminates a whole section of jobs. It kind of says, I don't like research positions, and I don't think they're as good as management positions. Yeah. So your answers are very right. It's too vague, but it also pits them up against somebody else. It could be that they go interview, or the person reading their resume is in a research position. They've just insulted them or said that they don't want to do what that person's doing. So that's another thing that's bad there. Environmental impact analysis position in a manufacturing facility versus other positions for environmental scientists. This one's better, but it's still bad. Why is it bad? Go ahead, tell me in the question box. Yeah, so you're right, Elizabeth. Again, this is another example of where they put versus. Never want to compare two things. Just tell them what you want. No need to say that something isn't as good as what you want. Ricardo says, in this economy, you get what you can. Well, that's true, but you will be more successful if you get what you actually want as well. And there are ways for you to do that. And the more targeted your resume, the better your chances of getting those types of positions. Okay, let's go to the highlights section. And here it's very nice. Most of you like this. It was the top thing that people talked about for sample B in the resumes. And the reason why it's so good, there's a few reasons. One is that it guides the recruiter's attention to the best things that are about you. You can put your top 3 things up there. By the way, I would have between 3 and 5 of these. Less is better, so if you can target it into 3 highlights, that's a good thing. And it's a way that you can take the job description and then figure out the top 3 things about you that match that job description and put it right up there at the top. See, the rest of your resume is going to be in reverse chronological order. So if you don't have the highlights section, you've got to rely on them to read through and parse your entire resume document and find the best things about you. Don't make them work for it. Put it right up front. Put it in the highlights section. And just like in a newspaper, it's the headline, it's the hook. So when reporters are writing news articles, they'll spend up to 80% of the time in constructing that article in just the headline alone. You know, the headline and the first sentence of that article will take the most time. That's because it's the most important. When you're putting together your highlights sections, think of the car analogy. You're going to want to set the context. Tell me a little bit about the problem, why you acted in the way you did, and what were the conditions or the circumstances. That way I can understand what you did. Then tell me the action you took. So this should be something that solved a problem. So don't tell me something bad. This should be a good thing about you. So what was the solution that you came up with? Why did you take that action? And then what was the result? Okay. If you can be quantitative, that is using numbers, you know, the 40% increase, that's better. But qualitative still counts. Qualitative is very good. You know, some sort of rating that you're able to apply to it. So context, action, result. Let's look at some examples. All right. So here's an excerpt from a job listing on top. So pursue research and maintain awareness of novel developments in numerical simulations related to constructing accurate geologic subsurface models to understand the geological structure, rock characteristics, and the likely distribution of oil, gas, mineral-bearing strata. Here's an example of a highlight. Okay, so what did I do? I created a new series of object-based 3D stochastic structural simulations. That's what this person did. Why did they do it? To quantify uncertainties in the special layout of faults and stratigraphic formations used in the management of petroleum reservoirs. So the context, they said that's the why. The action they took, they put that right up front, so they created these models. And the result is that they were able to use that to see the faults and stratigraphic formations used in the management of petroleum reservoirs. Now, this matches the job listing because they're wanting somebody who can build these types of models to find oil, gas, and mineral-bearing strata. So there you go. So that's how we do a one-to-one. Now, this one's fairly sophisticated because it's at the PhD level. I want to also show you one at the bachelor's level. So here's an example, an excerpt from a job listing at the bachelor's level. Manage, support, and oversee field investigations, including the installation of monitoring wells, sampling various media, soil, groundwater, surface water, air, etc., data analysis and interpretation, and report writing. So what did they do? What's their highlight that demonstrates that they're able to meet the requirements for this job? Well, they collected and analyzed more than 1,000 water and soil samples from the Newton County mine tailing site in Missouri to determine residual heavy metal levels for surface soils, groundwater, surface water, and stream sediments after the site remediation. So, car analogy, context. Where did they do this? It was at a mine trailing site in Missouri. So they were out in the field and they told us where they did it. Action, they collected all of these samples and analyzed them. And the result, they were able to tell which heavy metals were present in the soils, groundwater, surface water, and stream sediments. So here we were able to make a pretty close match to what the employer was looking for. That's the highlight section. So let's go on to the next. So the next section is background. And here's where you're going to tell about your education, your work experience, and other relevant skills. But before we talk about that, I'm going to go back to Nathaniel because he has a poll for you.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, and this got touched a little bit on when we talked about those first three resumes, resume A, B, and C, but now we're going to be a little bit more pointed in the question. When constructing a resume, which of these parts should come first? Education or experience? All right, and your answers are coming in. I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, and here we have the results. It's 62% of you feel that experience should come first, and 38% said education. So there you have it, Dave. And it looks like from some of the comments here that a few people have already caught on.
That's right. So Ty, Ricardo, we're not going to get anything over on you, it looks like. Let's talk about which one should go first, because it really depends on your situation. So if it's within 5 years of your graduation date, your education is the most relevant thing, and that's what you want to put first. What's the most relevant thing about what you've been doing lately? If your experience, if you've been out of school for 5 years, well then it really becomes more about your experience. So, you know, the 5-year rule that I'm talking about here is, it's not hard and fast. If there's some experience that you've had that shows that you're absolutely the right person for the job and it's not quite 5 years yet, this is your resume, you choose. But The general rule here is usually if you're within 5 years of graduation, then you learned the best and the greatest and the latest things, the innovations in school. So that should go next, should go first. And then your experience you would list after that. Now, in your education section, you're going to list your degrees in reverse chronological order. The format here is important. You need to have the degree, the field of study, the university where you got that degree, its location, and the year. Now that's if you recently graduated. If we're putting this section second and putting experience first, that is if it's over 5 years since you graduated, the year becomes less important. And for those of us that have been out for quite a while, we may not want them to know the year because then they can calculate how old we are, right? So if you're worried about discrimination based on age, especially on the older end of things, then you may not want to put the year. That's up to you. For graduate degrees, be sure and list the title of your thesis and the name of your advisor. Now, if I don't see your advisor listed there, that's a red flag for me. So I know some people don't have good relationships with their advisors, but there's really not much way around it here. You should go ahead and list your advisor. Know that the person reading the resume, if they know your advisor, they may call them up. That's just going to happen. What you've got to do, and we could talk about it in how to answer questions, difficult questions, is you need to be able to explain why your relationship's not good. So I think I've spent too much time on that one, but it's important that your thesis title be there so that I know what it was that you studied, what it was that you did, and your advisor. I usually suggest a highlight or a bullet in that section that also states what it was that your research was about. If your title is not explicit enough to give me that information, then give me a little bit more so that I can understand the relevance and the importance of the contributions you made in your graduate research. For grades, if you got an advanced degree, a master's, or a PhD, you're not going to put your GPA. Because here's the deal. If you're in grad school, you must maintain a high GPA. If you don't maintain a high GPA, you're out of there, right? So it really doesn't differentiate you from any of the other students. Exceptions are if you graduated first in your class, magna cum laude. For an undergraduate, if it's above a 2.8 on a 4-point scale, go ahead and put your GPA. If it's below 2.8, don't put it. It's not going to make you look good. So this is a marketing document. We want to make sure that what you're putting on your resume reflects on you in a positive way. Now, in the research work experience area, list your positions again in reverse chronological order. That's because we want the most relevant, the most recent things to be up top. Separate your postdoc and thesis research. So those were two different positions. Describe them that way. In the format, you're going to have your dates, the position title, organization, and key accomplishments. And remember, in your formatting at the very beginning, we said that we wanted to be consistent. So if you're going to have your dates along the right-hand side, make sure that they're all along the right-hand side. If you want to have them on the left, that's okay too, but just be consistent throughout. And state accomplishments concisely. Again, you can remember that CAR rule, right? So context, actions, result. Format it like a highlight. Now the next section is other relevant skills. So this can be special techniques, instrumentation, computer programs. Don't tell me about Microsoft programs because I just assume everybody can do that, right? So this should really be about things that make you special. Is there some language that you're able to use or some software package that you would definitely need to be able to use in the job that you're applying for that others may not have. So this is really things that differentiate you. Languages are always important. And let me circle back to specialized techniques, especially for online resumes. You know, we used to say just put a string of instrumentation or methods that method names that you know how to do, but that actually works against you in a lot of the search engine algorithms these days, because so many people were fudging their pages. They were putting the top search terms embedded in the background of their pages. And so Google figured that out, and they actually made their search algorithm smart enough to see whether you use those words in context. So it's much better if you're have a special computer program that you're able to use. Go ahead and embed the name of that computer program in one of your highlights. So in the job where you used it, tell how you used it. How were you able to use that to make a contribution to that particular project? If you'll use the terms in context, you'll get better results for search engine optimization, and that's usually what you want here. Plus, it's just a better way to make your argument. If you just list the techniques or list the instrumentation down there, I don't know what you did with it. Maybe you just had a class, or maybe you just saw one in the hallway. If you tell me what you're able to do with the instrument or with the program, you're much better off, and so am I. Now, the last section in the resume is the supporting information. This is where you would put awards, publications, presentations, professional affiliations, and perhaps references. So on publications and presentations, it depends on how much space you have left over in your resume. Your resume should be 1 or perhaps 2 pages max. If you get over 2 pages, nobody's going to read that anyway, so why are you doing that? If your publications are going to take up space that you could be using to brag on yourself, then why not just put a statement that says the number of publications you have. You can also, if you have patents, include the number of patents that you have, and you can even summarize and say the number of presentations that you've made. Now, if you're talking about presentations, remember, a presentation to your research group, it's not good enough. I mean, that doesn't differentiate you. Everybody has to do that. So really, we're talking about presentations at large conferences. Invitations to make presentations are better. International is better than local. So be judgmental, be careful about what you choose, and choose the things that are going to make the biggest impression on the people that are reading your resume. On the languages, I'm getting a question from Sebastian. No, Sebastian's asking about particular programs. I can't tell you specific programs that you want to highlight. You'll have to, because they differ from field to field. Since we're talking about all the earth and space sciences, that's a pretty broad field. But make sure that it's something that differentiates you. Okay. I'll get to a few more of the questions in just a moment, but before we do that, let's go back to Nathaniel.
All right. Thanks, Dave. I'm going to launch this final poll that we have here, and it is, how do you incorporate references in your resume? Within your resume document, included with the application, but it's a separate document, or I don't include references in my resume at all. And I'm going to give everybody a few more moments to respond. And I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. And it looks like 23% of you include it within the resume document, Another 45 include it with their application, but it's a separate document, and 32% do not include references. So I'm going to pass this back over to you, Dave.
Okay, so just like publications and presentations, I think it takes up space. If you have the space, fine, go ahead and put it there. If you have the space, put your publications. If you only have one or two, that may be okay. If you have 5 or 6 or maybe even 12, then what you can do for all of these parts of your resume is put the number that you have and make a separate document that's just for your publications and presentations. You can have a separate document that's for your references. There's a special concern that you should have on references, and that's if you put them in there, the potential employer may call them up. So they may not ask you if it's okay to call your references first. You already gave them the reference, so they're very likely to just go ahead and call that person. So if you're going to do that, make sure your references are prepared. You can give them a copy of your the job description that you're applying for, the job listing, and I recommend that you even give them a few highlights. Tell them some stories. You know, if the employer calls you, please make sure to mention that I helped you do A, B, and C. So it's okay to make the references job easier. They can say whatever they want. So you're not really telling them what to do. You're just making their job easier by letting them know. Again, I like to have a little more control over that, and so personally, I would hold back my references unless they explicitly ask for them. If they ask for them in the job listing, then you're going to need to go ahead and include those. Let me hop back to professional awards and honors because I skipped over that. These are good to put, but make sure that you give preferential space to those that apply to the job or that make you look professional. So things that are related to your awards that are related to your science or presentations that you may have made, like the OSPA, the Outstanding Student Paper Award at the AGU Fall Meeting, or some of the other awards that you might get at GSA or the other organizations, professional organizations. Those make you look good. They set you apart from others. Those are good to put on there. If you were in a leadership position for you know, a volleyball team, maybe that's not the best thing, unless you were the captain of the team. So if it shows leadership potential or teamwork, that can be a good thing. But be careful in what you choose. Okay. All right. So let's talk about what not to include. Don't include things that you can be discriminated against. So age, marital status, number of children. Don't mention religion or political affiliation. Why would you do that? It's not important to the job, and it's something that they could discriminate against you for. You don't have to put your national origin, and don't put your salary history. Now, if they ask for it in the application, you'll have to be honest and report that, because they can ask you for your tax forms when you actually show up to verify it. But unless they ask, don't put it there. Don't volunteer that. Formatting, we've gone over most of this. Be consistent, make sure it's clear. I know that some of you thought that the formatting was boring on those other resume examples, but that's okay, because it's not about being creative. It's about getting the information across in an easy to read format. And if you make it too fancy, add too many graphics, then if they're pulling this into an electronic system, an electronic onboarding system for an employer, then that system may read those special characters as something that you don't want it to read them as, or it may mess up all your formatting altogether. So simple's usually best in this type of situation. We talked about using technical words in context, your keywords, avoiding special formatting, and that is it. That's the resumes in a nutshell. So now I want to make time for you to ask additional questions. So,
all right. Yeah, so we have quite a few questions in here already, so I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in here, Dave.
okay.
The first one that I'm going to pitch to you is, how do you respond to the salary requirement for a job application when you have to enter a number?
You have to have, okay, for salary, if they're asking you, then what I usually say is that any valid offer will be considered. So if you can, you want to stall a little bit, because once you give a number, that's where the negotiation begins. So if they give a number, you're going to start there. You can ask for more. You're probably not going to ask for less. If you give a number, then they're probably going to ask for less or offer you a little bit less or try to bring it down. But you can give them a good answer. So there are lots of places online. You can look at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. They'll give you the average salary for a position. So you can look up the type of job in the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. It's bls.gov. Or you can go to AGI. AGI also publishes summaries of salary information for new graduates. They do a survey there. And there are other commercial firms like Glassdoor, and you can just do some searches so that you're familiar with the average salaries, and you can, if they say that you have to put something out there, put that number out there. Now, for a few of these databases, they'll actually break it out and give you the salary for men and the average salary for women. If you're a woman, or if you're a man, doesn't matter, always go with the men's. Always go with the bigger number, because they should be paying you the same. You're doing the same job. So don't hurt yourself. Don't give a bad number there.
All right. So the next question I have is related to the job objective statement. Aside from including it on your LinkedIn profile, what is the point? It seems like it's just paraphrasing the job requirements, and applying for the job seems like it's already an expression of your interest in the position.
Yeah, so if it's on a resume that you're submitting for a job, I usually say don't include it. But I like going through the exercise because of a common mistake I see. So probably about 60% of the resumes that I see that come through for resume reviews are not targeted. I read the resume and I don't know what kind of job they want. All right, so if you have an actual job you're applying to, it's much easier to match that to. But if this is a general resume, like you have to print up 50 of them because you're going to go to a job fair at your college or university, or you're posting it online like on LinkedIn or someplace else, then you need to go through some sort of focusing exercise so that you can decide what kind of job it is that you want. Because if it looks like you're all over the place, not only do I think you don't know what you're wanting to do, but you're making me work double hard, maybe 3 times as hard, because I've got to figure out what it is that you could do. So make it easy on me as an employer, or for whoever you're applying to, and tell them what it is that you want to do, what you're qualified to do, what you would find rewarding. Because people that are doing what they want to do and what they're qualified to do do a much better job at it. They produce better results. And if I'm a private company, or even if I'm a nonprofit like at AGU. The people that I hire, I want to make sure that they're going to do the best job they can possibly do.
Great. All right. The next one I'm going to talk to you. What do you mean by preferred type of employer when you're talking about the job objective earlier?
Okay. In a very general sense, we can talk about government, industry. You can work for yourself, or you could, so government, and academics. That's the other one. So most people that have gone through the U.S. education system are just thinking about academic jobs. That's because that's what your professors know the best, and that's probably what they've been talking about, and that's all you've seen so far. But we know that most people are going to go into industry, especially at the bachelor's or master's level. Over 80% of new graduates at the bachelor's and master's level are going to go into industry jobs. And for PhD level, it's 48% that go into industry jobs, and most of the rest will end up in academia, a few in government. So the job, the environment at those types of organizations is quite different. So you need to think about what it is, what type of organization you'd like to work for. Another factor is what size of organization. A large organization is going to have lots of levels. So if job title is important to you, if being tightly focused on one thing is important to you, a big company might be a good place to go. If you want to try and do it all, then go work for a startup, because on Monday you'll be doing whatever your specialty is, maybe hydrology research. On Tuesday you're answering phones because you're the only one there. And on Wednesdays, you may have to clean the toilets because you don't have enough money at the company to do all of those things. So you got to do it all. So size of the company matters too.
Great. All right. Another one here. Should you include or not include volunteer activities such as employee satisfaction committees? Would employers consider those kinds of activities as, quote, too activist?
I think the question really is that the best thing to highlight about you? So remember, you only have a little bit of real estate. You only have one page. Maybe I'll let you go to two if you're a PhD student or you have lots of experience. But for most of you, I want you to keep it tight. Keep it to one page. And so the experiences that you choose to highlight, that you choose to include, should be the ones that match the job the best. If you're applying for an HR job, something in human resources, where employee satisfaction and understanding employee satisfaction is a key to the job, then yeah, totally. If you're going for a job in hydrology, well, maybe you ought to talk about hydrology.
Great. All right. All right, so this one's a little bit long. As a project/program coordinator or specialist, I often get asked about my specialty, but there really is no specialty when you're the right-hand person to the project manager. Project management incorporates many task activities, and you do everything. How do I best answer this question?
I think you just did. So project management is your specialty, and you're able to apply it in a broad sense to many scientific principles and fields. I'm also guessing that you're able to translate between the languages of the different types of scientists. So I know that one of the projects I was on, I was working with a physicist, a chemist, a physical chemist. They all had different units. They all had different terms that they were using to describe the systems. It was the same system, but they each had different terminologies and ways to calculate things. And so my job as the coordinator of that project was to be able to translate between them, also to be able to bring it all together into one place, organize that information, and manage all the resources. Managing all the resources is huge. Managing the people is huge. So you're eliminating waste. There's a lot of things you can brag about there. And the number of people that have project management expertise and scientific expertise is really quite small. So you just figured out the way to differentiate yourself and make you sound very special.
Great. I think that this is going to be our last question, and it is, would undergraduate research and abstract conference presentations be something to highlight or put at the top of my research/work experience section?
So can you repeat that?
It's about undergraduate research or maybe conference presentations and whether or not it's appropriate to highlight them or to put them into your research/work experience section.
Okay, so the thing that's critical here is the research. So not many undergraduates get to do undergraduate research. So it's telling about the research that's important. The presentation of that is secondary. You know, it's good. Go ahead and say that you presented it, but the real thing that's going to get my attention, that I want to know more about, is what did you do in that research? What did you learn? What skills are you able to transfer from that you can apply to the position that I'm interviewing you for? I hope that made sense.
Great. Yeah, no, I think it did. So I think we're going to wrap up the webinar right now, but there were so many questions that everyone had. I can tell you that if you keep a lookout on the job, many of these topics will be covered in some upcoming blog articles. And some of these that we weren't planning blog articles, we will be taking your questions and responding to them in the blog as well. And for everybody that asked, if we didn't get to answer it during the presentation, Dave and I will be taking a look at these, and we'll get back to you personally and let you know a response to your question. With that, I'm going to say thank you, Dave, and thank you to everybody that came and participated with us this afternoon. We hope that you'll join us in future webinars.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.